Inflation is a gradual increase in the price of goods and services and is generally measured by the percentage of increase of price in a set basket of goods and services. Inflation comes in three main categories, which are demand pull, when demand outweighs the supply, cost push, when there is an increase in the production costs, and inflation expectation, and that's just when people predict that inflation will go up. Unemployment is the term that we use to measure the amount of a population that is willing and able to work but can't. There are three subcategories that we use to describe why people are unemployed. First, we have cyclical, and that's when unemployment rises and lowers with the naturally occurring business cycle. Structural, when the skills of an employee does not match what employers are looking for. So, for example, technological change in the work environment. And number three is frictional, and that's when someone is between jobs or looking for a job.
In this presentation, we will examine the economic collapse of Venezuela, analyzing its hyperinflation, fiscal mismanagement, and structural weaknesses, using tools like the ASAD model or the aggregate supply and aggregate demand model, Phillips curve, Laffer curve, and inflation theories to connect theoretical concepts to real-world evidence. The ASAD model explains Venezuela's economic collapse through shifts in aggregate demand and supply. Venezuela's excessive money printing and fiscal overspending shifted its demand to the right. On the other hand, declining oil revenues, reduced imports, and weak production shifted supply to the left. The combination led to hyperinflation and economic stagnation. The Phillips curve explains the trade-off between inflation and unemployment. Simultaneous hyperinflation and high unemployment broke this relationship. Venezuela experienced severe stagflation, defying expectations of reduced unemployment with high inflation. The Laffer curve examines taxation and revenue relationships. Over-reliance on oil revenues and excessive subsidies led to diminishing returns. Hyperinflation in Venezuela stemmed from two primary sources: demand pull inflation, printing money, increased aggregate demand excessively, as well as cost push inflation, rising costs due to import dependency, and declining oil revenues worsened inflationary pressures. In conclusion, Venezuela's economic collapse highlights the dangers of fiscal mismanagement, over-reliance on oil, and unchecked monetary expansion. Tools like the ASAD model, Phillips curve, and Laffer curve provide valuable insights into the crisis. Effective, balanced policies are crucial to such scenarios.
Inflation and employment affect people in many ways. Inflation reduces purchasing power, impacts people with low income, raises interest rates, and hurts some investments. Firstly, when prices are high, this discourages consumers from purchasing goods and services because they are paying a higher price for the same good. When people spend less, this causes the demand to go down, but supply goes up. Next, inflation affects people with lower incomes. The prices of everyday items are increasing the cost of living because the cost of the items are higher, making it harder for people because their incomes does not always reflect the inflation rate. Inflation also raises interest rates. To combat inflation, the central banks increase interest rates, commonly using the monetary policy. By increasing interest rates also hurts investments, and people save less to spend more of their income. The graph beside shows the inflation rate from 1998 to now. The horizontal axis shows the year and the vertical axis shows the percentage rate. As shown, inflation has been going up and down since 1998. During 2020 was when COVID-19 hit and inflation went down by 1%, but then spiked from 1.5 to 4.5%. It reached its peak in 2023 at a staggering 6.5% and has been gradually going down since. How does unemployment affect the real world? Well, unemployment slows down economic growth, increases government spending and debt, reduces GDP, and causes individuals and their families to face mental health and physical health challenges. When people are unemployed, this slows down the economy because they are not part of the labor force, and it lowers the production of goods or services. GDP is measured by calculating the total amount of all goods and services produced in a country in a period. When people are unemployed, this slows down the economy and the government has to provide aid. Governments have to give out more unemployment benefits and other financial aid, which makes them go into debt by spending their money on helping citizens. Also, unemployment does not only affect the individual, but it also affects their families too. Their standard of living goes down and they start to face mental health challenges that can impact their physical health after, and vice versa. The graph beside shows the unemployment rate in Canada. The horizontal axis shows the year from 2020 to 2024. The vertical axis shows the unemployment percentage rate. In 2020, the rate went from almost 14% from less than 6%, more than double. The employment rate has been at 6.5% since October 2024.
Central bank policymakers play a critical role in managing the trade-offs between inflation and unemployment, a challenge often described using the Phillips curve relationship. This inverse relationship suggests that efforts to reduce unemployment in the short run may lead to higher inflation and vice versa. The key tools used by policymakers are monetary policy instruments. Examples are interest rate adjustments. By raising interest rates, central banks can reduce inflationary pressures but may slow economic growth, leading to higher unemployment. Conversely, lowering interest rates can stimulate growth and reduce unemployment but may lead to inflation. Another example is open market operations, buying or selling government securities to control the money supply. Reserve requirements involve adjusting the minimum reserves that banks must hold, which affects lending and spending. The second one is balancing acts. Policymakers aim to balance low inflation and unemployment, often termed the dual mandate of many central banks. External shocks like supply chain disruptions or geopolitical conflicts, example the 2020 pandemic or oil crisis, make this balance more complex, sometimes leading to stagflation, which is high inflation with high unemployment.
Inflation and unemployment are two very important economic factors that greatly impact individuals, families, and the overall economy. These topics help to show the delicate balance needed to maintain economic stability and further improve the quality of life. With inflation, purchasing power gets affected, there's a rise in living costs and economic decisions, and rising interest rates gets influenced, while unemployment slows economic growth. Moreover, the connection between these factors, shown by the Phillips curve, stagflation, and income distribution, underscores their difficulty and relevance in molding economic policies. In Canada, there are recent trends of inflation rising and unemployment rates. This highlights the importance of addressing these issues to strive in society. This should be done by examining the causes, effects, and relationships between inflation and unemployment to get insight into how to navigate these challenges in the future.